I'd like to leave you with some final thoughts around trend lines. They're obviously a very important and core part, and many people just trade off trend lines. So let's wrap up with a little bit of some final thoughts around trend lines. First off, it may seem a little complex at first, like when do I start, when do I end? Again, you just extend out that line, but starting, picking, it's a little bit more dynamic of a process. And you understand it will get easier with practice, right? And you'll start seeing it, start making sense, and it'll be fine. You'll be fine. So it'll get easier with practice. And the trend in trend lines are an indicator. They're a tool, just like there are other indicators out there as you're learning in the course. And so you can choose the indicators that you want to use, right? So you can always do that. And there's an indicator, the trend line and trend lines are trying to show you, is there an established trend, and is that established trend upward or is that established trend downward? And so that's the whole idea of it, right? And it's great to combine with other trading indicators. So if you have an upward trend, you could use another indicator like a moving average, crossover, Bollinger Bands, lots of different indicators out there that we're going to learn about. You can, or candlestick patterns, for example, and then you can use that with other trading indicators, and that'll help give you further confirmation and confidence in your trades, and also confirmation that you've drawn the trends correctly, and that's all making sense and working out and being as predictable as anything can be. And that's the idea of a trend line, so they're a very strong indicator around that, because you want to trade off trends because that's much more predictable than kind of just guessing out there, right? So if there is no trend, if there's no indication of a trend, there is no trading opportunity. You don't have that prediction ability without some type of trend, either up or down, to see what might be happening next. That's where the phrase, the trend is your friend, comes from, because it helps you with that prediction aspect, and then helps you to manage your trades and make decisions based on that technical analysis and logic versus other ways people might make trades, the weather, whatever it might be. So you're trading on trends means you're not always in the market on all the securities you follow. You might be following a basket of securities, you might be in the market, or you've got a trade out there in some, and others are on the sidelines waiting for some type of trend that you want to trade to develop. So that's where you're in and out in different securities and at different times, with the whole goal of making profit as you use all these indicators and building up to a total profit and success is the idea. But trends are something that you need to develop too, and you need to make sure and firmly establish that a trend has developed. If anything, where people may struggle is they try to jump in too early on a trend without waiting even at least for a second touch that the trend is established, let alone maybe a third touch that might be much more confirming. So you have to be patient with trend lines, right? So you have to let that trend develop. Once it develops, then that's good. You want to make sure that trend line develop. And another thing that people can struggle with is that they try to make the trend line fit. They really want to buy a security. They think it's going to go good and it's starting to look good, and they really want to get in there. But if the trend isn't established yet, then you're at much more risk, right? Then you're not trading on a trend. You're much more risky. And so trend lines help take out some of that risk. It's also very dispassionate. You're not based on hoping. You're based on math, statistics, and logic and things like that to show and also that herd mentality and trading mentality, where lots of people are buying in. They're seeing a trend. They're helping reinforce the trend. You're seeing it too, and you're getting in at the appropriate point, and then you're making your profits as well by trading with these trends. Is the idea, in a dispassionate way. Another thing, as far as a final thought, and this I think is real important, is you don't have to be perfect, right? You don't have to be in your trend line drawing. You want to be good. You want to keep getting better all the time, but don't beat yourself up like, I thought there was a trend. Because sometimes what looks like a trend ends up not being a trend. Things that look like a breakout are just a false breakout. And this is just reality of trading life. There's winners and there's losers in your trades. That's all okay. It's a whole process, like what we're learning in the course. And we're going to learn about how to manage your investments too as part of this too. So it all goes together. So you don't have to be perfect in, let's say, in your trend drawing, and you don't have to be perfect in your trades. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And it's hard to get in perfectly at the bottom and perfectly at the top, right? I'm going to say hard. Let's say it's impossible to do that consistently. But the idea is you're getting in close enough towards the bottom and close enough to the top that you're making that profit in between, and you're using your trend lines to help you do that. In fact, a really good quote around that idea is, this is from Bernard Baruch, which was, I'm willing to let others have the first third of a move, and the last third of a move, I want to be in the middle third. All right, so look at our image here, right? We're not trying to buy at zero or the number one touch of, let's say, an upward trend line. we're buying at number 2 or 3, and then we're not trying to, sell exactly at 5, 6, or 7, or even right at 4 necessarily. We're trying to, sell close enough that we make a good profit in there. So the idea of that is we're trying to say is be patient. Let the trend develop. Reduce that risk by letting the trend develop. Don't buy into something you think you see at touch number 1. That's not a trend yet. Number 2 or 3 is a much better indicator. So you're reducing that risk. Be happy with all the profits in that bulky middle third, right? The profits between number 2 and number 4 are great, or number 3 and number 4 are great, and you're doing that over and over again. That's going to be very profitable for you. So don't worry if you thought, oh, I got in too late or I got in too early. Enjoy that middle third. And then, it's kind of that idea of the trend is your friend. You need to have that trend established so it'll be friendly to you and be really real profitably for you as well. So there you have it with trend lines. I hope you enjoyed this section and start practicing. And the more you draw trend lines and more you use your trading platform to draw the lines and you experiment with the different stocks, use that paper trading to practice and see, how well you're analyzing things without real money. Use the paper trading to help with that, and using fake money type of accounts. That'll be real helpful for you because you're going to start developing that skill and you're going to start seeing these trend lines and you'll start to see them easier and better. And then you should start overlaying other indicators on top of that, like chart patterns or candlesticks or moving averages or relative strength index, all these different indicators. Now you're really coming together as a strong trader, and that's my hope for you. So with that, trend lines, and remember, what are we going to say like the 100th time? The trend is your friend.